It all started with an oil spill. Now there's two words you never want to see printed front page of your local news, but it was the headline that the small fishing town of Denska woke up to one catastrophic morning. For an economy like theirs, a spill like this would be a death sentence. And sure enough, over the next few weeks, months, years, they felt those effects tear their community apart. Lost jobs, mental health crises, families drifting apart. Eventually they all left. Denska's a ghost town now, and the only folks you might see are misfits and mavericks. Kids who've snuck out here to be alone for some reason or the other. It's a sandbox of abandoned buildings. Every street a playground in the making, every wall a blank canvas for graffiti. Yup, this is Denska. This is the setting of Pixelopus's Concrete Genie. In Concrete Genie, you play as Ash, a young loner with an artistic flair. He's one of the few kids who still come out to this ghost town anymore. Something about his old hometown, even now that it's been abandoned, maybe because it's been abandoned, still calls to him, still gives him the inspiration and space he needs to fuel his art. Unfortunately, he isn't alone. For most of the game's runtime, you'll be hounded by a small but formidable ensemble of bullies, all of whom have it out for Ash and constantly tear down his art.
I said give it. Nope. The heck?
The bullies aren't your only obstacles in Concrete Genie, however. Denska has also been ravaged by a mysterious darkness. Black vines and tendrils wrap themselves around walls, around buildings, around the remains of spaces we once called home, constricting them, blocking our access. Ash's weapon in his fight against these dark vines, it's a video game, right? You gotta have a special weapon, is a magic paintbrush gifted to him by the titular Concrete Genies. Ash's weapon is his art. Using the paintbrush, Ash designs, draws, and summons these genies into Denska's blank walls, and he has your imagination to thank for it.
Nice to meet you.
The game's main mechanic is that you can paint over the walls with lights, colors, special effects as you see fit. And if concrete is your canvas, the genies are your masterworks. They can interact with your other paintings, your other worlds in fun ways, but they can also influence your real world from their 2D plane. A fire genie might burn down an obstacle for you, for instance, or a wind genie might help blow you across a flooded room. They're genies. They're here to help and grant wishes. Of course, your greatest wish of all is to vanquish the darkness. There's something sinister about it, something even the genies cower in fear from. Unless you can help them find their spark. It all started with an oil spill. It's impossible to get that visual out of your head when you see the darkness. So many parts of the town are plagued by it, haunted even. Dark tendrils ooze around dusty power plants and abandoned factories. A living reminder of just how severely Denska's economy collapsed.
Can't even remember the last time I spotted a little Cecil the sea lion around here.
The aesthetic links between the spill and the darkness are clear, but what strikes me about Concrete Genie is that they are, narratively, treated as two different things. The spill is self-explanatory. It was a result of gross negligence on the part of a large corporation, the effects of which are felt most by average civilians. Small businesses. The darkness, on the other hand, isn't itself a product of ecological damage. These aren't chemicals, they aren't biohazards. As one scientist in the game theorizes, the darkness must be negative emotion incarnate. It was born from the town folks' own despair, their own sense of rage and fear, their own darkness. There is a piece of graffiti near the docks that I still think about a lot. Plastered over the wall in trashy handwriting are the words, "Art is lame," which, okay, a lot to unpack here. This was presumably scrawled in by one of the bullies. As we've established, they hate art. But it's just such a strange message, isn't it? What kind of art? Is this just a dig at Ash? How can someone believe so strongly in such a vague sentiment that they would put it on a wall? And isn't this message itself kind of an art piece? Lame. By fighting the darkness, this physical manifestation of despair with his art, by painting these dark walls with magic and neon graffiti, Ash stands as a counterpoint to this sentiment. When everyone else has lost hope, has despaired, he's reignited a form of life in this town in the shape of his friends, the genies. Like that odd message on that odd wall, the core themes of the game feel simple but explicit. No, actually. Art saves lives. Art has meaning. Art kinda rocks. Taking into account all of the surrounding context, it's a great theme for this game to explore. But does it do so meaningfully? Whenever the bullies close in on Ash during the game's main story, they often try to snatch away his magic paintbrush. But the moment one of them touches it, we're shown visions of that person's past. We see the circumstances, the family lives, the social injustices that made them into the bitter kids they are today. They see it. Ash sees it. And until next time, they retreat, never quite grasping what it was that the brush had been doing.
Just get away from this loser! God, I can't stand looking at his stupid face.
These kids' backstories are genuinely upsetting, and you do feel for them. But as Ash, and by proxy the game itself, acknowledges,
I guess there's a reason they're so mean. Doesn't make it okay, though.
that doesn't mean their behavior towards him is okay. Thematically, though, we're not just glimpsing their backstories, we're also getting small glimpses of the darkness itself. The paintbrush is reacting to its own antithesis, to the thing that emanates deep in the hearts of Ash's enemies. With all of that being said, Ash's art is largely all aesthetic. It exists to be bright and fun and beautiful, and you know what? He's a kid. It doesn't need to be much more than that. But this does mean that the game's two opposing forces initially feel in want of nuance. This is light versus dark, beauty versus despair, belief in all art versus belief against all art. The enemy isn't the oil spill itself, it's that Denska reacted so poorly to it and gave up on themselves. But negative emotions are human and necessary, and how can you not take it hard when your hometown is hit by a disaster such as this? Is it enough for the game to say that pretty art can fight despair? Or is art powerful because it can be ugly, because it can explore darkness, because it itself can despair? Concrete Genie's final act is perhaps its most complex. The negativity within Ash's bullies reaches a critical mass and starts infecting the genies. Denska's greatest sources of darkness take over its last guardians of light. Ash has no choice but to fight the once friendly genies using nothing but his brush, and the help of his once not-so-friendly bullies. As the genies start lashing out and plunging Denska into deeper negativity, Ash rescues the bullies from their own demons and shows them that they can all still do some good. They apologize for their past behaviors, recognizing that they owe him one now. And through helping him, they find some semblance of redemption.
Genie! You guys okay?
Yeah, I think. What the heck happened?
Admittedly, my initial instinct here was that Concrete Genie had lost me, primarily for two reasons. 1. I disliked that the source of Ash's, the Genie's, and Denska's problems is negative emotion from an understandably negative situation. If the story begins with an oil spill, then why isn't that spill itself a more relevant and direct source for the ominous darkness? Why does it have to be Denska's reaction to the spill that's so wrong? 2. This is a game primarily aimed at kids, and I don't love that it falls upon Ash to have to forgive and even help redeem those who tormented him.
Because of what I saw. Yelling, fighting, parents splitting up, even a father in prison. And I realized that those things you were doing to me weren't about me. They never were.
Having spent some more time thinking on it though, I've come to see both of these aspects of the story in a different and more complex light.
Oh, wait. We found these on the way. Figure you might want them back.
Because yes, the doom and darkness is a more immediate threat than the oil spill, but it is still a byproduct of that spill. Therefore, the faceless and nameless corporation that caused it is still our main antagonist by proxy. The oil spill is still our story's catalyst by proxy.
The oil tanker, where this whole mess started. Never should have let that thing anywhere near Denska.
Consider this unlikely source. In the recently released God of War Ragnarok, and you can skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid knowing anything about that game, there is an Easter egg that directly references Concrete Genie. It's a piece of poetry that retells the events of the game. It reads, "His mission, save his home, threatened by seas and disuse. His weapon, imagination, blues, reds, purple, and chartreuse." The misuse of Denska's water, its most vital natural resource, is to blame for everything else Denska fell victim to. It is the source of the corruption, the core threat, more so than any emotion formed as a byproduct, at least initially. I want to take you on a tour through the town. The pockets of darkness themselves evoke an image reminiscent of ecological disaster, but so do Denska's bare, abandoned walls. Its metals the color of rust, its sky devoid of color. In fact, all color looks washed out so that it's just grays and browns that remain. It makes sense from a gameplay perspective. Pixelopus wants you to fill all this in. The town acts as a virtual coloring book for you to restore life and color to. But it works on a narrative level too. The colors you ignite are profound because they fight and contrast ugliness. Spend some time by the water and it couldn't be clearer, because the water couldn't be murkier, that this place was hit by a spill. It couldn't be clearer why the fisheries shut down and why tourists never come here anymore. It couldn't be clearer that the darkness, the magical pools of black, were predated by something every bit as insidious, just in a lighter shade. Grayness. Apathy. It is an apathy that trickled down from those responsible, who shrugged their shoulders and said, not our problem, nothing we can do, to those victimized, who hung their heads low and muttered, "Oh God, oh no, there's nothing we can do." Because what I ultimately see the darkness as is a metaphor for climate doomerism, or the idea that we are past the point of being able to do anything about climate change. It is on the opposite end of the spectrum from climate denial. Rather than deny that they have been hurt and therefore there's nothing that needs to be done, Denska accepts that it's been hurt, and therefore there's nothing left that can be done. It's the same result from a different perspective, inaction, and that is a darker response than any negativity or rage could be. That is Denska's curse. Yes, it absolutely should not fall on the average townsfolk to have to clean up their own waters and to challenge the status quo with art and to organize, but as unfair as it is, it does. When corporations fail us, it falls on us to hold them accountable even when it shouldn't. Denska's problem isn't just that its townspeople felt sad, it's that their sadness caused them to give up. Secondly, it is similarly unfair that it has to fall on Ash to forgive and rehabilitate his own bullies. It's the hand he's been dealt. The kind of hand we are all dealt far too often, but the parallel ends there. Beatrice, Chuck, Janie, Zach, and Froggy aren't a faceless corporation, and they aren't just bullies. They're kids.
Rebound!
Yes, Denska's history and theirs are direct results of systemic injustices. But the systems and the injustices were created by people. So, in the world of this game, the solution rests with people as well.
Need a lift?
With the new generation. Ash is the key because he has something these kids don't, even within their own circle of friends. Kindness. More crucially, however, there is also one thing Beatrice, Froggy, and friends have that Ash doesn't. Community.
And you want to help them? Really, Froggy? I mean, they bully you almost as much as me.
Come on. You need to see this.
And it is only through community and kindness together, through collective action, that we can fight the urge to give up when all else seems lost. It will be through mutual aid and collective action that we will save our communities, even when the deniers tell us, we'll be okay, it's not so bad, and the despondent tell us, we won't be, it is too late. Yes, art is Ash's greatest weapon in Concrete Genie, but for his art to mean something, it must be born from feeling and it must inspire action beyond aesthetic. For him to grow up, his understanding of feeling must mature, and for his feeling to mature, he must confront both the darkness that plagues his hometown and the mental blocks that keep him from trusting others. The genies help him achieve this, but they are ultimately a natural and magical force beyond his control. They are literally art taking on a life of its own. What they show him, what they teach him, isn't enough by itself. Ash must also actualize what he learns from art and carry it into the real world. He must connect with others like him, others who are flawed and human and oftentimes cruel, but in the spirit of this game, never past the capacity for kindness. There's one last point I think is worth bringing up, one I don't think Pixelopus intended. But it's interesting, I think, to highlight the origin of the genie when talking about, well, Concrete Genie. Genies come from the word jinn, used to refer to entities in Islamic folklore and even pre-Islamic religions in Saudi Arabia. In the simplest terms, they are beings said to be made of fire, who aren't necessarily good nor evil, they just are. Sometimes they'll hang around to aid or mess with a person just because. It's fitting then that an oil leakage leaves Denska in the hands of such a volatile force, kindled and spurred on by a boy with simple intentions, a simple wish. It's fitting that their volatility ultimately reaches a head and sets Denska on fire. It's fitting that the town is saved when we persist in spite of all of that, and we continue to make meaningful art in the face of it all. The genies show us that art isn't always pretty, but that we can unearth a deeper beauty by confronting the darkness that might otherwise hold us back. This confrontation gives us distinction. This confrontation gives us contrast. It gives light and hope a chance to burst forward, radical and relentless, not just to lie in the background stagnant and perpetually at rest. Because hope that fights will always be more powerful than hope that lulls us into rest. It's fitting that Denska is born anew like a phoenix through the mischief of little creatures of fire. Yep, for this small town, the dark days all started with an oil spill. But there's hope yet, because it all ended with fire and ash.